Monika Heiming, Executive Director of the European Rail Infrastructure Managers. Thank you for joining today. Because of the COVID-19 crisis, there is a significant drop in transport volumes, and also at the same time, rail passenger transport in Europe almost have come to a standstill because of a decrease in passenger traffic. And as the European Rail Infrastructure Manager, what do you think that has to be done to overcome this crisis?
I cannot get the virus away, but what we can do is, of course, ensure seamless operations on track, and this is what the members do. We have since last year we have a contingency plan in times of crisis, which has been developed on European level, amongst others on the platform of rail infrastructure managers called Prime. So, the members have also reached out to each other to ensure seamless transport operations. And that has been solved apart from a few exceptional border crossings on the member state level, but on the infrastructure level, we have done our utmost to keep the freight trains running, and also the few passenger trains that are still out there.
And can you give some examples on how you keep the trains running? What has to be done to do this?
We are in the traffic control centers. People reach out to each other. They're also on the CO level and on the operational level, so that they clear the tracks, and that they also look into the operational procedures to get the trains cross-border.
Mm-hmm. And there's also something that has been done. It are the green lanes. What is that exactly?
The green lanes is a sort of Schengen, if you may say so. So you get on the ground. So for land-bound transport, rail and road, even if the normal civil transport has been blocked across borders, that at least the freight trains or the trains in general, and also the freight lorries, can continue to run. So the main thing, of course, when you have a crisis, that you can sustain the logistic chains, and this we have ensured.
And what is the role of infrastructure managers in doing this?
If we don't cooperate with each other, so the trains are piling up at the borders, and this is and then you have an issue with you have an interrupted logistic chain. So the members, of course, the members of EIM reached out to their different authorities, and they made sure that the trains could go cross border, and they set up and setting up these green lanes. It was quite useful.
Mm-hmm. So on the 19th of March, the Commission adopted a temporary framework for state aid measures, and that also allows state support to help with the disturbance in the economy on a member state. And how can this help, and how should it be applied?
There is a huge discussion going on this temporary state aid framework, because there is a lot of public criticism that these aids are not very much in line with the Green Deal or further sustainability criteria. In the rail sector, which is a bit more on the greener side of many other industries, there's a huge concern, of course, generally, that some of the operators may not make it. So there has been a lot of public call for loans and extended credit lines, suspending charges, and to keep these rail operators alive. And some member states continue to finance the PSO services. And in one member state, I know for sure, in Austria, so the private operator Westbahn has been included in the temporary state aid in Austria, together with ÖBB. So that is quite important, actually, to maintain the operators and to support them.
And what can be done, for example, to face liquidity problems? Because you have, of course, track access charges, you have cost for energy. What can be done?
So infrastructure managers cannot dump all the charges. So we have been speaking with the European Commission on that. We have been actively reaching out to them. That's quite important. So we have been looking in from the legal angle into what can be done. And we agreed with the Commission that everything that's in the regulation is very difficult to suddenly stop being applied. So a regulation is a piece of law. So we cannot charge direct costs below direct charges, for example. That's quite difficult. Or you need an exemption or a special rule for that. On the more national charges, such as parking or cancellation fees, parking or reservation fees, several of our members, or actually quite a lot of them, don't apply them or have suspended them.
And what are the differences between countries of helping the railway operators?
I don't have the entire overview, so DG Move has done an overview, but for the moment we're looking into a harmonized approach, also on Prime, the platform for rail infrastructure managers, so that we have a harmonized approach to deferral of truck access charges payments. That's one thing, so we cannot dump them, but we can defer the payments. And we can decide, actually, as the members decide with their respective regulator and the Ministry of Transport, to actually no more charge cancellation fees. And that is important. Some of the operators have actually not cancelled their trucks, so they should do so. Otherwise, they continue to be charged for these trucks. So some of the trucks, I mean, you only get paid for you only pay for the trucks you're using. Actually, if you don't use them, you should cancel them, and some have not done it.
And you said that it's not possible to change the direct cost because of the European legislation. Do you think there should be an exemption in this difficult time?
Let's say an exemption. On what kind of basis do you agree then? Is it then, so that's very complex. So the easier way out, instead of changing then the regulation, and it becomes very difficult to get back afterwards, is to actually defer the payments. Because the infrastructure managers also need to prepare for the post-COVID. One day the virus will be over, sort of, and then we're coming to normal. And then we have now again the same issues with capacity shortages, investments needed. And if you do not charge any more income, I mean, if there's no income anymore, so then the infrastructure manager cannot continue paying its own suppliers. For example, ERTMS rollouts and truck improvement works.
And when you look at the railway industry in Europe, where do you see the biggest problems in this moment because of the COVID crisis?
The biggest hurdle for me is indeed the survival of the new entrants overall, or the smaller operators. And also, of course, the survival of, or let's say, the reduced investments because of COVID. The certain maintenance works have to be delayed if you cannot do the social distancing, for example. So some urgent projects are being done, but it takes a bit longer. But to actually ongoing. To continue the project, that's a bit of an issue.
And if you think about the role of European Commission, why do you think that the help of the Commission is needed most?
In the coordination, actually, and also here in the temporary state aid framework, to make it work, to have a really look at that investments or loans are being done more or less in the sustainable manner. That's quite important. And also the most important coordination, the most important element is the coordination role of the Commission, so that we don't have too much of a patchy approach, because rail, after all, is a systemic mode of transport. So and it's a network-based approach, so it has to be a bit harmonized. And also to make sure that to prepare for the post-COVID. And what I really found extremely good of the Commission is the green lane approach. So they've been very, very much eager to coordinate and keep the logistic chains open and not interrupted.
And if you could address the infrastructure managers in Europe, what would you say? What would you say to encourage them to keep on going?
The encouragement is actually something which is shared by all of us, is the cross-border cooperation with each other. That's quite important, and let's continue with that, and also let's continue investing in our networks. So that's quite important. So we need to continue also investing in digitalization, so more forward-looking technologies. So that helps us even more now in the next crisis, which I hope won't come so quickly. But that we have a better overview and a quicker overview of what's going on.
What are the most important things that a railway industry has learned from this crisis?
Solidarity and cooperation are the ways. Nobody can solve this crisis alone. So if you do not cooperate and exchange, you're not going to make it in any crisis.